The phone felt heavy in my hand as I dialed my daughter's number that Tuesday morning. I just finished baking my famous pecan pie, the one Rebecca had loved since she was 5 years old. The kitchen still smelled of butter and toasted nuts as I wiped flour from my hands. "Hi, sweetheart," I said when she answered. "I wanted to know what time you'd like me to come by for the housewarming on Saturday. Should I arrive early to help set up?" There was a pause. Then I heard Colin's voice in the background, sharp and dismissive. "Tell her it's not really her crowd, Rebecca. These are business people." My heart stopped. I waited for my daughter to defend me, to say something, anything. But the silence stretched like a chasm between us. "Mom," Rebecca finally said, her voice small. "Maybe it's better if you sit this one out. Colin's right, it's mostly his colleagues and their families. You'd probably feel out of place." I looked at the pie cooling on my counter, golden and perfect. "I understand," I whispered. "Then I'll send you something instead." After I hung up, I stood in my quiet kitchen and let the tears come. But something else came too, a steel determination I hadn't felt in years. I spent the rest of that day cleaning my small house, scrubbing counters that were already spotless. My hands needed something to do while my mind processed the hurt. Every surface I wiped felt like I was trying to erase the humiliation. Around sunset, I paused in front of the mantel. There, in a simple wooden frame, my late husband Thomas smiled back at me. His carpenter's hands rested on his workbench in the photo, sawdust catching the light like gold. "They think I'm nothing without you," I told his picture. "They think being poor means being worthless." Thomas had always told me that a person's value wasn't in their bank account. He'd built beautiful furniture with his hands, created art from wood that people still treasured. We'd never had much money, but we'd had everything that mattered. I touched the frame gently. "I won't let them treat me like this," I promised. "I won't let your memory be tainted by their cruelty." That night I couldn't sleep. I kept replaying Colin's words, kept hearing Rebecca's silence. But underneath the pain, something new was growing, a quiet resolve that would change everything. Thursday morning I went to Martha's diner for breakfast. It was my weekly routine, and I needed the normalcy. The familiar smell of coffee and bacon usually comforted me, but today I felt hollow. I was pouring cream into my coffee when I heard voices from the booth behind me. "Did you see Colin's new mansion?" someone said. "Must have cost him a fortune. I heard he stretched himself pretty thin to afford it." "All flash and no substance," another voice replied. "My cousin works at the bank. Says Colin leveraged everything he had. One bad month and that house of cards comes tumbling down." I stirred my coffee slowly, listening. So Colin's impressive wealth was mostly borrowed. Interesting. "He acts like he owns half the town now," the first voice continued. "But between you and me, I've seen his type before. They build empires on credit and hope nobody notices." I left a tip and walked out into the bright morning, my mind working. Colin had dismissed me as too poor to attend his party. But perhaps his own wealth was more fragile than anyone knew. Rebecca called on Friday, her voice bright and artificial. "Hey, Mom. Just checking in. How are you?" Kept my tone neutral. "I'm fine, sweetheart. How are the housewarming preparations going?" "Oh, they're wonderful. Colin hired caterers and everything. It's going to be so elegant." A pause. "You understand why we couldn't include you, right? It's just about appearances and making the right impression." I gripped the phone tighter. "Appearances," I repeated. "Yes, exactly. Colin says perception is everything in his business. We have to maintain a certain image." "I understand more than you think, Rebecca." My voice was calm, but my heart was breaking. When had my daughter become someone who measured people by their bank accounts? "Great. I knew you'd get it. Listen, I have to run, the florist is here. Love you." She hung up before I could respond. I sat on my worn couch and stared at the ceiling. My daughter had chosen her husband's values over everything I'd taught her. But I wasn't done teaching yet. That weekend, while Colin and Rebecca hosted their party without me, I climbed into my attic. Dust motes danced in the light from the small window as I pushed aside boxes of Christmas decorations and old photo albums. In the far corner sat Thomas's cedar trunk, the one his grandmother had given us when we married. I hadn't opened it in years. The hinges creaked as I lifted the heavy lid, and the scent of cedar and lavender filled the air. Inside lay the quilts, 6 of them, folded carefully and wrapped in tissue paper. Thomas's grandmother had made them by hand, each one a masterpiece of tiny, perfect stitches. She'd spent years creating these treasures. I lifted one out, unfolding it gently. The pattern was called Garden of Eden, and the colors were still vibrant despite being nearly a century old. The stitching was so fine, so precise, that it looked like a painting made of fabric. Thomas had always said they were valuable, but we'd never needed to sell them. They were family history, threads connecting us to the past. I sat in the dusty attic, holding my husband's heritage in my hands, and an idea began to form. Monday morning brought an unexpected visitor. Professor Vincent Hayes stood on my doorstep, a pleasant-looking man in his 60s with kind eyes behind wire-rimmed glasses. Mrs. Ward, I'm researching antique quilts for the Historical Textile Society. Your neighbor mentioned you might have some older pieces. I hesitated, then invited him in. I brought down one of the smaller quilts, the one called Stars over Carolina. Professor Hayes's eyes widened as he examined it. His hands trembled slightly as he traced the delicate stitching. Mrs. Ward, do you know what you have here? My husband's grandmother made them, I said quietly. This is museum-quality work. The precision, the dye stability, the pattern complexity. This could be worth tens of thousands of dollars. He looked up at me, his expression serious. I have a colleague in Chicago, Dr. Patricia Morrison at the Folk Art Museum. She needs to see this. Felt my pulse quicken. Tens of thousands. Possibly more, depending on provenance and condition of the others. He pulled out his phone. May I take some photographs to send her? I nodded, my mind spinning. Colin thought I was too poor to visit his mansion. He had no idea what treasures sat in my attic. Dr. Morrison arrived from Chicago 3 days later, a sharp-eyed woman who moved with purpose. She spent 2 hours examining each quilt, taking notes, photographing details, and asking questions about Thomas's family history. These are extraordinary, she finally said, sitting at my kitchen table with her notes spread before her. The craftsmanship is museum quality. The Garden of Eden quilt alone could headline a national exhibit. I never realized, I murmured. Most people don't. Folk art like this is often undervalued until experts recognize its significance. She leaned forward. Mrs. Ward, I'd like to propose something. We could display these in a traveling exhibit celebrating American textile heritage. And if you're interested, we could auction one. Perhaps the Stars quilt, with proceeds benefiting folk art preservation. How much would it bring at auction? Yes. Conservative estimate. $40,000 to $50,000. But it could go higher with the right buyers. I thought of Colin's mansion, bought with borrowed money. I thought of Rebecca's embarrassed silence. I thought of Thomas, who'd built beauty with his hands and never needed to brag about his worth. Let's do the auction, I said. I have a gift to send someone. The auction took place in Chicago 3 weeks later. Dr. Morrison insisted I attend, though I asked to remain anonymous. I wore a simple navy dress and sat in the back row, watching as collectors and museum representatives filled the elegant auction house. When they brought out the Stars over Carolina quilt, projected images showed every intricate detail. The auctioneer explained its history, its artistic significance, its rarity. The bidding started at $20,000. Within minutes, it climbed to $40,000. 2 serious collectors battled for it, driving the price higher and higher. Finally, the hammer fell at $68,000. The room applauded. I sat quietly, tears streaming down my face. Not tears of sadness but of pride. Thomas's grandmother's work was being honored. Her legacy would inspire others. Dr. Morrison found me afterward. "The buyer is the Smithsonian," she said, smiling. "Your quilt will be seen by millions." I donated $15,000 to the local art center in Thomas's name. The rest I kept, knowing I'd need it soon. Colin had taught me something valuable. Sometimes money is the only language certain people understand. News of the mysterious donor spread through town like wildfire. The art center announced a major renovation, funded by an anonymous benefactor. People speculated endlessly about who had such generosity. I heard through friends that Colin had laughed about it over dinner one night. "Probably some guilty rich person trying to buy their way into heaven," he'd said. "Art centers are always looking for suckers." Rebecca had apparently defended the donor. "I think it's beautiful that someone cares about preserving culture," she told him. The irony was delicious. My daughter praised generosity she didn't recognize, while her husband mocked the very kindness he'd denied me. I went about my quiet life, gardening, baking, attending church. But I was waiting. The pieces were falling into place, and soon Colin would understand that poverty and worth were very different things. Professor Hayes stopped by one afternoon with news. "Dr. Morrison wants to create a permanent exhibit around your remaining quilts. She's proposing the Thomas and Helen Ward collection. Are you interested?" I thought about it carefully. "Can we wait a few months? I have something to do first." He nodded, understanding in his eyes. "Take your time. Great art isn't going anywhere." I learned through the town grapevine that Colin's firm was struggling. The real estate market had shifted, and several of his investments had soured. He needed new investors urgently. One evening, I overheard him at the grocery store, talking loudly on his phone. "The museum deal is going to save us. Once I'm associated with that new gallery, investors will see I'm a serious player. It's all about perception." I paid for my groceries and left, my mind working. Colin was planning to use his connection to the art center, the one I'd funded, to boost his failing business. He'd positioned himself as a benefactor, taking credit for work he hadn't done. The museum had approached him about sponsoring their new folk art gallery. He'd jumped at the chance, seeing it as a way to improve his image. What he didn't know was that Dr. Morrison had contacted me about naming rights. For a modest additional donation, I could name the gallery in Thomas's honor. The paperwork sat on my kitchen table, waiting for my signature. I picked up my pen and signed my full name carefully. Helen Elizabeth Ward. Then I called Dr. Morrison. "I'm ready to proceed with the gallery dedication." "Wonderful," she said. "The gala is in 2 weeks. Will you attend?" "Wouldn't miss it," I replied. Before the gala, I wanted to send Rebecca something, a message she might understand later, even if she couldn't see it now. I went to my sewing box and found a small antique thimble that had belonged to Thomas's grandmother. I wrapped it carefully in tissue paper and placed it in a small box with a handwritten note. "From small stitches, great things are built. Love always, Mom." I mailed it to their mansion, imagining Colin's dismissive snort when he saw another gift from the poor mother-in-law. But Rebecca would keep it. She always kept my gifts, even if she hid them from Colin. The thimble was a seed I was planting. Someday she'd understand its meaning, that the woman who made those quilts had created art worth more than Colin's borrowed mansion. That patient, careful work built legacies that lasted. That evening, I tried on the dress I'd bought for the gala. It was nothing fancy, just a simple emerald green that Thomas had always said brought out my eyes. I looked at myself in the mirror and saw not a poor woman, but a woman of substance. "Almost time," I told Thomas's picture. "Almost time for them to learn what you always knew." The night before the gala, Colin rehearsed his speech at home. I knew this because Rebecca called me, her voice strained. "Mom, can I talk to you about something?" "Of course, sweetheart. What's wrong?" "Colin's been so stressed about this museum event. He's giving a speech tomorrow night at the gallery dedication. He keeps practicing, talking about vision and success and making the right connections." I paused. "He's changed, Mom. Everything's about image and money now. Maybe tomorrow will help him understand what really matters, I said gently. What do you mean? Sometimes the universe has a way of teaching us what we need to learn. Get some sleep, Rebecca. Tomorrow's going to be an important day. After we hung up, I laid out my dress for the gala. Dr. Morrison had arranged for me to sit near the front, though most people wouldn't know who I was. I'd be just another guest in a simple dress, invisible until the moment of revelation. I couldn't sleep that night. I kept thinking about how Colin would react, how Rebecca would feel. Part of me ached for my daughter's pain. But she needed to see who she'd married. The museum gala was elegant beyond anything I'd imagined. Crystal chandeliers cast warm light over guests in expensive gowns and tuxedos. Waiters circulated with champagne and hors d'oeuvres. A string quartet played softly in the corner. I arrived early and found my seat. Dr. Morrison greeted me warmly, squeezing my hand. Are you ready for this? I've been ready for weeks, I told her. Colin and Rebecca arrived fashionably late, making an entrance. Rebecca wore a stunning silver dress that must have cost thousands. Colin worked the room like a politician, shaking hands, laughing loudly, making sure everyone saw him. I watched my daughter's face. She smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. She looked tired, anxious, like someone playing a role she didn't quite fit. Colin took his place at the podium, adjusting the microphone. He launched into his prepared speech about the importance of art and culture, about giving back to the community, about building legacies. The irony burned. He spoke of legacies while dismissing the woman who'd actually created one. And now, he concluded, I'm honored to unveil the new gallery. Dr. Morrison joined him on stage, and together they grasped the cord that would drop the covering from the dedication plaque. The velvet drape fell away, and the room went silent. The bronze plaque gleamed under the lights, its letters clear and unmistakable. The Thomas and Helen Ward Folk Art Gallery, in loving memory of a master craftsman and his devoted wife, dedicated to those who build beauty from humble beginnings. Colin froze mid-gesture, his smile turning to stone. His face went pale, then red, then pale again. He looked like a man who'd just been punched. The audience began to murmur. Ward. Isn't that his mother-in-law? The woman who funded this. Wait, I thought he was the donor. Dr. Morrison stepped to the microphone, her voice clear and professional. We're honored to dedicate this gallery to the memory of Thomas Ward, whose grandmother's quilts are the centerpiece of our new collection. And we're grateful to his widow, Helen Ward, whose generous donation made this gallery possible. She turned and gestured toward me. Helen, would you please stand? My legs felt weak as I rose, but I kept my head high. The room exploded in applause. Camera flashes went off. People were standing now, clapping, smiling at me. I looked at Rebecca. Her mouth was open, tears streaming down her face. She was staring at me like she'd never seen me before. Colin couldn't finish his speech. He stumbled through a few more words, thanked Dr. Morrison, and practically ran off the stage. The rest of the evening passed in a blur. People approached me constantly, thanking me for my generosity, asking about the quilts, wanting to hear about Thomas. I answered their questions graciously, all while watching Colin and Rebecca from the corner of my eye. They stood in a corner, arguing in harsh whispers. Rebecca kept looking at me, her expression a mix of shock and something that might have been shame. Colin's face was dark with rage. A reporter from the local paper approached me. Mrs. Ward, this is quite a story. The anonymous donor turns out to be the mother-in-law of one of our prominent businessmen. May I ask why you kept it secret? I didn't want attention, I said simply. I wanted to honor my husband's memory. The quilts were his family's legacy, and they deserved to be shared with the world. And the timing. Mr. Fletcher seemed surprised by the dedication. I met her eyes steadily. Sometimes the best gifts are the ones people don't expect. After the reporter left, Dr. Morrison pulled me aside. That was masterful, she whispered. Did you see his face? I saw, I said quietly. But this wasn't about hurting him. It was about showing my daughter that worth isn't measured in mansion sizes or bank accounts. Well, you certainly made your point. I watched Rebecca walk toward me through the crowd, her mascara smudged, her silver dress suddenly looking too flashy, too desperate. Mom! Rebecca's voice cracked. Why didn't you tell me? Would you have listened? Asked gently. We stood near a window overlooking the museum gardens, away from the crowd's noise. I don't know. Colin said he told me. She couldn't finish the sentence. He told you I was too poor to visit your home. That I wasn't your crowd. The words still stung, but I kept my voice calm. Rebecca collapsed into a chair, sobbing. I'm so sorry. I was so stupid, so shallow. You tried to come to the housewarming, and I let him turn you away. My own mother. I sat beside her and took her hand. Sweetheart, I didn't do this to punish you. I did it to show you something important. Money can be borrowed, mansions can be lost, but character, real character, is built slowly, stitch by stitch, choice by choice. The thimble, she whispered. The note you sent. I didn't understand. Your great-great-grandmother made those quilts with that thimble. She wasn't rich or famous. She was just a woman who created beauty one tiny stitch at a time. And now her work hangs in museums. While Colin's empire is falling apart, Rebecca said bitterly. His investors are pulling out. I heard him on the phone today. Everything's collapsing. I squeezed her hand. Then you have a choice to make. The next morning, the story hit the local papers. Humble Widow Funds Museum Gallery. Read one headline. Anonymous donor revealed as local resident, said another. The article praised my generosity and detailed the story of the quilts. It mentioned Colin only as family member who attended the dedication gala. The lack of recognition must have burned him more than any direct criticism. By afternoon, I heard that Colin's investors had started withdrawing their support. They questioned his judgment and character. If he'd married into a family with such wealth and treated them so poorly, what did that say about his values? Rebecca called me that evening. Colin's firm is finished, she said quietly. The partners voted to buy him out. He's being forced to sell everything, including the house. I'm sorry, sweetheart. Don't be. I'm not. Her voice was stronger now. Mom, I've been living in a beautiful prison. Everything was about appearances, about impressing people who don't really care. I lost myself. I lost you. You haven't lost me. I'm right here. She was quiet for a moment. Can I come see you tomorrow? Just me, not Colin. I need to talk to you about something. I'll make pecan pie, I said, smiling through tears. After we hung up, I sat in my small living room and felt peace settle over me like a warm blanket. Justice wasn't always about punishment. Sometimes it was about showing people the truth so clearly they couldn't ignore it anymore. Rebecca arrived the next morning driving her own car, not the flashy sports car Colin had bought her. She wore jeans and a simple sweater, and she looked more like my daughter than she had in years. We sat at my kitchen table with pie and coffee between us, just like when she was young and would tell me about her day. I'm leaving him, she said quietly. I already talked to a lawyer. The divorce will be ugly. Colin's angry and desperate. But I can't stay. I don't love who I became with him. That takes courage, I told her. You taught me courage, Mom. I just forgot for a while. She took a bite of pie and tears slipped down her cheeks. This tastes like home. Like everything I gave up for someone who never valued me. He valued the idea of you, I said. The trophy wife who'd make him look successful. But he never saw the real you, the girl who used to rescue injured birds and read poetry under the willow tree. I miss that girl, Rebecca whispered. She's still there. She was just hiding. We talked for hours that day about everything and nothing. About Thomas and the quilts. About her childhood memories. About her dreams that she'd packed away when she married Colin. About the future that was scary but full of possibility. When she finally left, she hugged me tightly. Thank you for not giving up on me. Never, I promised. That's what mothers do. Colin showed up at my door 2 days later. I'd been expecting him. You destroyed me, he said without preamble. His face was haggard, his expensive suit wrinkled. You planned this whole thing to ruin my life. No, Colin. I didn't destroy you. I just refused to stay invisible when you tried to erase me. I didn't invite him in. We stood on my front porch, him towering over me standing my ground. You used your money as a weapon. I used my resources to honor my husband's memory and support my community. That's not a weapon, it's a choice. You're the one who made assumptions about my worth based on my modest lifestyle. Rebecca's leaving me because of you. Rebecca's leaving because she finally saw who you really are. You measured everyone by their bank accounts, their addresses, their status. You forgot that people are more than their possessions. He stared at me with something like hatred. You think you've won. This isn't about winning, Colin. It's about teaching you that kindness matters more than appearances, that humility is stronger than arrogance, that the person you dismissed as too poor to enter your home had more value than you ever recognized. You're just a vindictive old woman. I smiled sadly. No. I'm a mother who taught her daughter an important lesson. You ruined yourself the day you confused wealth with worth. I just gave you enough rope. He turned and walked away, his shoulders slumped. I watched him go, feeling no triumph, only a quiet satisfaction that justice had found its way. Over the next few weeks, Colin's fall became the talk of the town. His real estate firm collapsed completely. The mansion went up for sale at a loss. His former business partner spoke carefully about diverging values and ethical concerns. But the narrative that took hold wasn't about business failure. It was about Helen Ward, the quiet widow who'd turned her husband's heritage into a legacy that would inspire thousands, who'd used her resources to build rather than destroy, who'd maintained her dignity even when dismissed by family. People stopped me in the grocery store to thank me. The church asked me to speak about generosity. The Historical Society wanted to interview me about the quilts. I remained quiet and gracious, deflecting attention, insisting I'd only done what any loving wife would do. But I noticed the change in how people looked at me. I wasn't poor old Helen anymore. I was Helen Ward, benefactor and guardian of cultural treasures. The sweetest moment came when Mrs. Peterson from the diner approached me. I feel terrible, she said. We gossiped about your family without knowing the truth. You heard us that day, didn't you? I did, I admitted. You must think we're awful. I think you're human. We all make judgments based on incomplete information. The key is being willing to learn better. I patted her hand. Besides, what you said helped me understand Colin's situation. So thank you. Rebecca moved into a small apartment across town. It had 1 bedroom, an eat-in kitchen, and a view of the park. She loved it. She started visiting me regularly, sometimes bringing groceries, sometimes just stopping by to talk. We began working together to restore the remaining quilts, carefully cleaning and repairing tiny areas of wear. Great-great-grandmother's stitching is so perfect, Rebecca marveled one afternoon, her needle moving carefully through the fabric. How did she have the patience? She understood that beautiful things take time, I said. That rushing and cutting corners only creates work that falls apart later. Like relationships. Rebecca looked up at me. I'm sorry I let ours fray so badly. But now we're repairing it. Stitch by stitch. She smiled, and it was genuine this time. Not the brittle, desperate smile she'd worn at Colin's parties, but the warm, open smile of my little girl. We worked in comfortable silence for a while, the afternoon sun making the colors of the quilt glow. This, I thought, was worth more than any amount of money. This quiet moment with my daughter, both of us creating something together, understanding finally that we had everything we needed. Mom, Rebecca said softly. Thank you for the gift. Which one? Asked smiling. All of them. The thimble. The lesson. The second chance. She squeezed my hand. The reminder that I came from strong women who built beauty from nothing. 3 months after the gala, Colin's bankruptcy became official. The mansion sold for half of what he'd paid, leaving him underwater on debt. He moved to another state, chasing a job opportunity and a fresh start. Rebecca and I went to see the house one last time before the new owners took possession. We stood in the empty living room where I'd been told I wasn't good enough to visit, where Colin had built his castle of borrowed money and broken dreams. "It's just a house," Rebecca said quietly. "I don't know why I thought it mattered so much. Because Colin convinced you it did. Because society tells us that bigger is better, that expensive means valuable." I put my arm around her. "But you know better now." "I do." She turned away from the empty mansion. "I'm happier in my little apartment than I ever was here. I can afford it on my own. I don't owe anyone anything. It's mine." We drove back to my house and made dinner together. Nothing fancy, just spaghetti and salad. But we laughed and talked, and Rebecca told me about her new job at the art center, the one my donation had helped create. "They love hearing the story of the quilts," she said. "Kids come for field trips, and I get to tell them about great-great-grandmother who created beauty with her hands, who never gave up even when things were hard." "You're keeping her legacy alive," I said. "That's the best gift you could give her memory." 6 months after everything changed, Dr. Morrison called with news. "Helen, the traveling exhibit is ready. Threads of Heritage. The Ward collection will visit 15 cities over the next 2 years. We've had requests from museums across the country." "Thomas would be so proud," I said, tears in my eyes. "There's more. We want to publish a book about the quilts, their history, and the craft techniques. It'll be used in textile programs nationwide. Your husband's grandmother's work will teach the next generation of artists." I thought about the anonymous old woman who'd sat by lamplight, making tiny, perfect stitches, never knowing that a century later her art would inspire thousands. She'd been poor in money but rich in skill, patience, and vision. "Yes," I said. "Let's do the book. But please include information about other folk artists too. This shouldn't be about one family. It should celebrate everyone who creates beauty without recognition." "You're remarkable, Helen," Dr. Morrison said warmly. "No," I replied. "I'm just the caretaker of something remarkable. There's a difference." That evening, I sat in my garden as the sun set, thinking about how far we'd come. Rebecca was healing, building a new life on her own terms. Colin had learned, the hard way, that character matters more than appearances. And Thomas's legacy lived on, inspiring people he'd never meet. Sometimes the best revenge isn't revenge at all. It's living well, loving deeply, and showing the world that quiet dignity has more power than loud arrogance ever will. A year after the housewarming I'd been too poor to attend, Rebecca invited me to her new home. Not an apartment anymore, but a small house she'd saved up to buy herself. It had 2 bedrooms, a garden plot, and a front porch with a swing. "It's not a mansion," she said nervously as I arrived. "It's perfect," I told her honestly. And it was. Full of light and warmth, decorated with things she loved rather than things meant to impress. We sat on her porch swing with glasses of lemonade, watching the sunset paint the sky gold and pink. I'd brought my pecan pie, and we ate it straight from the pan with forks, laughing like we used to. "Remember when Colin said I'd feel out of place at his party?" "Yes." "Don't remind me," Rebecca groaned. But he was right in a way. I would have felt out of place. Not because I was too poor, but because those weren't my people. They were people who measured worth in dollar signs and square footage. I squeezed her hand. "These are my people. You're my people. The ones who know that love can't be bought and memories matter more than mansions." Rebecca started crying, but they were good tears. "I wasted so much time." "No, sweetheart. You learned something important. That's not wasted time, that's earned wisdom." We sat together as stars appeared, talking and laughing and just being mother and daughter. No pretense, no performance, just love. I sit in my sewing room now, working on a new quilt. It's for Rebecca, a wedding gift for someday, when she finds someone who values her for who she is, not what she represents. Sunlight streams through the window, making the colored threads glow like jewels. Each stitch is small and careful, building something beautiful one tiny movement at a time. People ask me sometimes if I regret the way things happened with Colin. They want to know if I planned the whole thing as revenge. But it wasn't like that. I simply refused to accept his definition of my worth. I honored my husband's memory and my family's legacy. I used the resources I had, resources Colin never bothered to notice, to do something good. The fact that it also taught him a lesson was just a natural consequence of his own assumptions. He said I was too poor to visit their new home. Turns out I was too rich, in the ways that actually matter. Rich in history and heritage. Rich in quiet dignity and patient love. Rich in the knowledge that true worth isn't borrowed or bought, but built slowly, stitch by careful stitch, choice by honest choice. I thread my needle with emerald green silk and continue working. This quilt will take months to complete, maybe longer. But that's okay. The best things always do. From my spot by the window, I can see Rebecca's car pulling into my driveway. She's coming to help me with the stitching, to learn the craft that connects us to the strong women who came before. And I smile because this quiet afternoon with my daughter, creating something beautiful together, this is worth more than all of Colin's borrowed mansions ever were.